Have you ever stopped to wonder how all the different pieces of a software app actually, well, talk to each other? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that with something called UML interaction diagrams. We're going to see exactly how those software conversations happen. Let's dive in.
So let's start with that big question. How do all the different components inside a piece of software, like your favorite app on your phone, actually work together to get something done? How do they communicate? It's not magic, right? There's a really structured conversation going on, and we just need a way to see it.
And that is exactly where interaction diagrams come into play. The best way to think of them is like blueprints for those software conversations. They're visual models that show us, step by step, how different objects send messages back and forth to get a job done. They make all that invisible communication totally visible. Now, UML gives us two main ways to draw up these blueprints, and we're going to look at both. They're called sequence diagrams and collaboration diagrams. And here's the interesting part. They both tell the exact same story, but they do it from two completely different points of view. First up, we've got sequence diagrams. And honestly, the best way to think about these is as a timeline. Their entire job, their whole reason for being, is to show you the sequence of events one after another as they happen over time. The source material calls this a fence format, which is a pretty cool way to put it. Just picture it. All the objects are lined up at the top like fence posts, and you see the messages getting passed back and forth between them. It's this really clean, linear view that makes it crystal clear what happens first, what happens next, and so on. And these diagrams are actually built from just three simple pieces. First, you've got your objects. Those are the participants in the conversation. Then, each object has a lifeline, which is that vertical dashed line showing that it exists for the whole interaction. And finally, you have the messages, which are just the arrows showing the communication going from one object's lifeline to another. And here is the single most important rule to remember. The one thing you gotta know when looking at a sequence diagram: time always flows from top to bottom. The message you see at the very top happens first, and the one at the very bottom happens last. It's really that simple. All right, now for our second type, collaboration diagrams. So if a sequence diagram is the timeline that shows when things happen, then a collaboration diagram, well, that's the map. It shows you how all the participants are connected to each other. These diagrams use what's called a network format. So instead of that rigid left-to-right layout, objects can be placed anywhere on the page. The focus here is all about the structural organization, the static relationships, and the links that exist between the objects that are involved. Now, this is where it gets really clever. How do you show the order of events without a timeline? Well, we still have objects, and they're connected by links. But to understand the sequence, you follow the sequence numbers. A message labeled 1 happens first, then maybe a substep 1.1, and then 2. It's a brilliant way to put a timeline right onto a structural map.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? Collaboration diagrams really are a hybrid. They show you the static structure and the relationships between things, kind of like a class diagram, but they also show you the dynamic back and forth of messages over time, just like a sequence diagram. Best of both worlds.
Okay, so we've got our timeline and we've got our map. Let's put them side by side to really get a feel for what makes them different and what they're each trying to show us. Here it is in a nutshell. Sequence diagrams are all about modeling the flow based on time ordering. Their big strength is showing you the precise sequence of events. Collaboration diagrams, on the other hand, model that exact same flow, but they do it based on organization. Their strength is showing the static connections between everything. This table sums it up perfectly. Sequence diagrams, super clear about timing, really easy to read. The only downside is they can get super wide if you have a lot of objects talking to each other. Collaboration diagrams are awesome for showing relationships, and they're also simple, but sometimes they don't quite capture every little detail of the behavior, especially with complex loops or conditions. So, knowing all this, how do you actually choose the right view for the job? When should you reach for the timeline, and when is the map the better tool to use? It really just boils down to this simple choice. If your number one goal is to understand and show the exact order that messages are sent, the timeline view of a sequence diagram is going to be your best friend. But if you're more focused on understanding how all the objects are linked together and organized, then the map view of a collaboration diagram is the way to go. And that's really the key takeaway here. Neither one of these diagrams is better than the other. They're not competing with each other. They're simply two different, equally useful perspectives on the very same interaction. One emphasizes the when, and the other focuses on the how. So let's end with a little thought experiment. Think about an action in your favorite app. Maybe something like posting a photo. If you had to explain how that works, would you be more interested in showing the precise sequence of events, a timeline? Or would you rather show how your profile, the photo server, and your friend's feed are all connected, a map? The answer to that question tells you exactly which diagram you'd choose.